Let your mind get quiet for a moment. Imagine you are floating in front of an endless image. At first, it looks like a simple spiral of color, curling in on itself like a shell. But then you drift closer, and what you thought was one curve splits into smaller curves, each one repeating the same shape. You move closer still, and those smaller shapes split again, revealing even finer spirals, new branching structures packed inside the old ones. You can keep zooming forever. No matter how deep you go, you never reach a final layer. You just keep finding more of the same pattern, repeating at smaller and smaller scales, like reality is copying itself. That repeating structure has a name. Fractals show up everywhere, in the edge of a coastline, where every inlet hides smaller inlets, and each of those hides tiny jagged bays, shaped just like the whole shore. In the shape of a tree, where the trunk splits into branches, and the branches split again into smaller branches, each one echoing the same geometry. In the veins on a leaf, or the frost spreading on glass, or the branching of lightning reaching for the ground in sudden, electric fingers. Nature seems to adore this repeating logic. It loves to take one pattern and let it unfold at different scales. Again and again, here's where things become quietly beautiful. What if consciousness works the same way? Not just your thoughts, not just your personality, or your voice, or your sense of me, but awareness itself. There's an idea sometimes called fractal consciousness. The suggestion is simple to say and enormous to feel, that your individual awareness might not be an isolated bubble trapped behind your eyes. Instead, it might be one repeating piece of a much larger pattern. An instance, a branch of a branch of a branch of something vast, ancient, and shared. In other words, what if your consciousness is only yours? You don't have to believe it. Just hold it for a moment. Let it sit in your chest while you breathe. Because when you really look at the world, there are hints. Think about blood vessels. The way they spread through the body looks almost exactly like a river system, seen from above. There's a main channel, then branching paths, then finer and finer streams feeding every cell. Your lungs do something similar. Air comes in through the trachea, splits into bronchi, then branches again and again into bronchioles and alveoli, like a forest turned inside out. Zoom out to trees. Zoom out to river deltas. Zoom out to lightning. It's all the same language, spoken at different volumes. Now, look at the brain. Neurons reach out with long, delicate arms, splitting, branching, searching. One neuron connects to thousands of others. Those connect to thousands more. When you look at a high-resolution image of neural networks in the cortex, and then you place it next to an image of galaxies connected by filaments of dark matter across the observable universe, the resemblance isn't perfect, but it's hard to ignore. Both look like webs. Both look like networks. Both look like something exchanging information across vast distances. It's tempting to say, that, just a visual coincidence. And maybe that's true, but stay with the feeling of it. The recognition, the sense that there's a pattern that repeats, from the microscopic to the cosmic, from the synapse to the supercluster. If nature tends to reuse structure, why assume awareness is exempt? We are used to thinking of consciousness as a sealed habitat. Private, personal, contained in a stall. My mind is mine, and your mind is yours. That's the normal story. It is tidy. It makes us feel separate, defined, individual. But what if that story is like looking at a single branch and forgetting there is a whole tree? In a fractal, every tiny region carries the information of the whole. Not the entire complexity, but the same essential rule, the same curve, the same rhythm. If consciousness is fractal, then your awareness wouldn't be a lonely spotlight shining in the dark. It would be one repeating expression of a much larger field of awareness that exists everywhere, all the time, at all scales. And suddenly things like intuition don't, sound mystical. They sound structural. Suddenly things like feeling deeply connected to someone you love, even from far away, don't sound like poetry. They sound like resonance. Two nearby branches, vibrating inside the same living pattern. Now slowly imagine this. You, lying there, breathing, hearing this, feeling gravity hold you in place. Above you, cities, beyond that, continents, oceans. The planet, magnetic field, the slow pull of the moon on the tides, the hum of solar wind. And beyond that, the stretched fabric of space, time itself, folding and curving around mass. We tend to think of those as out there, the big picture, the background that we exist in. But what if you are not inside that system? What if you are that system at a different scale? Think of a fern. Break off one small piece and it still looks like a fern. All the geometry of the whole plant is inside a single little frond. Self-similarity. The part mirrors the whole. Now swap the fern for awareness. What if your mind is a frond of a universal mind? Not identical, not interchangeable. You are still you. You still have your memories, your preferences, your voice, your humor, your scars. But maybe the base structure of experience aren't we being aware. Having perspective, witnessing reality unfold forward is not produced in isolation. Maybe it is inherited from something larger, like a pattern repeating. In that view, you are not cut off. You are not drifting alone in a mental space that ends at your skin. You are connected by design. And if that's true, then the feeling of being part of something bigger is childish or naive or sentimental. It's accurate. It's accurate. It's recognition. This has a quiet consequence. It means you don't have to fight so hard to belong, because belonging was never optional. You are already nested inside patterns that existed before you were born and will continue after you are gone. You are not trying to plug in. You are already wired in. Breathe into that for a moment. Because there is comfort in it. There is relief in imagining that your awareness is not a fragile candle in a cold, empty room. It S1 repeating glow in a web of light that reaches everywhere. This idea feels spiritual to some people. To others, it feels mathematical. To others, biological. And that's the interesting part. It sits at the edge between science and philosophy, between structure and meaning. Fractals don't care what you believe. They just repeat. So maybe consciousness does, too. Maybe there is a kind of scale invariance to being aware. At one scale, I am aware. At a larger scale, we are aware. At a still larger scale, awareness exists. And these aren't separate things. They read different zoom levels of the same living pattern, like the coastline, like the tree, like the spiral that never ends. You don't have to force yourself to accept any of this. You don't have to label it. You don't have to call it mystical or scientific or cosmic or neurological. You can just rest with the possibility that the self is bigger than the self, and that the edges of you may be softer than you were taught. For now, it's enough to simply notice the pattern. Close your eyes for a second, or just let them get heavy. Let yourself imagine that awareness has texture. Most of the time we treat awareness like air, invisible, background. Something we reusing, not something we re-inside. But if you slow down and really sit in it, awareness itself starts to feel almost patterned, layered, folded. You can notice this in a simple way. There is the part of you that's thinking, narrating, analyzing, judging, planning, commenting. That S1 layer. Under that is the part of you that's feeling. Not thinking about feelings, just feeling them directly in the body. Warmth in the chest, tightness in the throat, a little hum under the ribs. That's another layer. And under even that, there is something quiet. The part of you that's just aware, not saying anything, not reacting, just noticing. The watcher, thought is one pattern. Emotion is a deeper pattern. Awareness is the base pattern. And the deeper you go, the less personal it feels. That alone is interesting. When you sit in pure thought, you feel like me. When you sit in raw emotion, you feel like me, but softer. When you sit in quiet awareness, sometimes it doesn't feel like me at all. It just feels like awareness. Like standing in a wide field at night. That widening is the first hint of scale. Because here is the strange part. Awareness does seem to have hard edges. You can close your eyes and feel your breath. Yes. But you can also be aware of the room around you without touching it. You can be aware of the air, of the atmosphere, of the mood. You can feel someone walk into a space, even before you look. You can sense when a room is tense, or heavy, or peaceful. That's not logic. That's not a calculation. That self-presence, shared presence, which raises a quiet question. If awareness can widen and include more than just you, are you sure it ever belonged only to you? Think about how patterns behave in fractals. They not separate. They continuous. One part flows into the next. At the edges, they blur, blend, repeat into each other. There's no moment where the fractal says, "This is me. That is not me." It just keeps expressing itself. What if consciousness moves the same way? Not one mind here and one mind there, like boxes sitting on a shelf, but one continuous field of awareness, expressed through many local viewpoints, like a coastline seen from 1,000 different coves. From your perspective, you feel like an eye, a local node, a branch. Of course you do. You are experiencing through a body, a nervous system, a history. You are tasting the universe through a specific instrument, but zoom out, and maybe each eye is just one window of a much larger awareness, looking at itself. And when two people fall completely into sync, finishing each other as sentences, reading each other, as tone without words, reaching for the same thought at the same time. Maybe that's not mind. Reading in a supernatural way. Maybe that just two nearby branches, vibrating in phase, two parts of the same pattern, lining up for a moment. And that makes connection feel less like communication and more like alignment. Sit with that for a moment, because if that's true, you have never actually been alone, even during the times you were most sure you were. And it lives in your biology. Your brain is not a fixed object, it's dynamic. Neurons fire wire together, prune away, reroute, adapt. Thoughts become habits, habits become traits, traits become identity. But underneath all that activity is structure. Loops, feedback, branching, self-similarity. Your inner world is not random. It's patterned. What you repeat strengthens. What you starve quiets. What you return to grows. That is fractal behavior. A small pattern, repeated, becomes a large pattern, a passing mental loop. I'm not safe. I'm not enough. I'll be fine. I am supported. This moment is okay. Doesn't. Just live in your mind for a second and disappear. It leaves a trace, and each trace layers on top of the last until it becomes a way of being. This is how something tiny becomes your whole sky. One thought becomes a mood becomes a baseline becomes a lens, and eventually, the lens becomes, this is who I am, like a spiral growing from the center outward, repeating itself, widening. That as the inner fractal, we don't too usually think of it this way, but every pattern you rehearse is similar across scales. The way you talk to yourself late at night, in the privacy of your mind, echoes in how you move through the world in public, how you relate to people, how you make choices. The micro pattern becomes the macro pattern, and the reverse is true, too. Large patterns, the culture you grew up in, the emotional tone of the home you lived in, the way people around you modeled love or anger or silence. Those big surrounding patterns scale down into you. You carry them. You replay them, sometimes without meaning to. You embody them. So the question becomes, where do you actually start? If your personal patterns are shaped by larger patterns, and your small choices ripple outward and influence the larger field, maybe there isn't a clean line between individual and collective. Maybe it's all loops, nested, interlocking. Fractal, Your stress doesn't live only in you. The people around you feel it. Their calm doesn't live only in them. You absorb it. Your healing doesn't live only in you. It alters what you are able to offer, and that changes the field around you. And that field changes someone else. And that someone else eventually changes you. That means, in a very literal sense, you are part of a shared nervous system, which can sound overwhelming. You mean I am responsible for everyone? It's more gentle than that. It just means what you shift in yourself does not end in yourself. There is a softness to that realization, a kind of responsibility that ends duty, but belonging. Like tending your corner of a garden, knowing the roots are all connected underground. Now breathe in and notice how your body responds to this idea. Notice if there is a tiny exhale, a loosening. Because this view takes some pressure off the lonely version of selfhood. The version that says, it's all on me. I have to carry this alone. No one understands. No one ever will. Because if consciousness is fractal, if awareness is shared across scales, then isolation is not the base truth. It's just one temporary perspective from one narrow zoom level. Zoom out, and the pattern is still holding you. Here's another way to feel it. Think about music. When you listen to a song you love, something in you aligns with it instantly. You don't have to analyze the beat or decode the chord progression to know. This feels like me. You just feel it. It's nice recognition without thinking. But notice what's actually happening there. A song is vibration. Your nervous system is vibration. Your mood is vibration. Your attention is vibration. You are not understanding the music. You are syncing to it. Resonance. And resonance is a core property of repeating systems. Two things that share structure fall into rhythm with each other more easily. They couple. They lock. They stabilize. In other words, patterns like to talk to matching patterns. Now stretch that one layer deeper. When you meet someone and feel safe with them very quickly. When a place feels peaceful, the moment you walk into it. When a memory calms you just by thinking of it, that is a resonance event. Your internal pattern is finding something in the outer pattern that matches it, supports it, or soothes it. And the reason that works is because you and that other thing, person, space, memory, are not actually separate in the way your language makes it sound. You are two expressions of the same underlying structure, meeting, like two branches touching, like two spirals overlapping, like two parts of the same fractal resting against each other and saying, yes, I know you. I am made of this too. So here's something soft to hold. The feeling of, I belong here, is not just emotional comfort, it's structural alignment. It's your local pattern settling back into its larger pattern. And this has a quiet healing implication. When you feel disconnected, numb, anxious, or unworthy, most of us instinctively shrink. We pull inward. We isolate. We tell ourselves, I should figure this out alone, and then I'll come back when I'm okay. But if consciousness is fractal, if you are one repeating expression of a shared field, then withdrawing from everything is a little like cutting a branch off a tree and then wondering why it's starving. Disconnection hurts because it fights the underlying pattern. Connection heals because it restores it. Not performative connection. Not noisy connection. Not forced connection. True alignment. The kind where you feel seen without explaining. The kind where your nervous system finally stops bracing. The kind where you don't feel like you are performing a version of yourself. You are just being. That experience, just being and still being held, is the nervous system remembering the larger pattern it came from. So if you've ever felt that with someone, or with a place, or even with a moment in nature, you've already felt what we were talking about. You've already felt fractal belonging. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to force it. You don't have to earn it. You just let yourself notice it when it's there, because it was already there. It's always been there. Keep drifting. If you've ever looked closely at nature, really looked, you've seen this repeating structure everywhere. A fern is just a plant. It's a pattern, repeating itself at different sizes. Each small leaflet looks like the branch, which looks like the whole. A Romanesco, cauliflower, spirals and spirals and spirals. Coastlines, curl in fractal edges, jagged from far away, jagged from up close, endlessly similar. Lightning branches, rivers branch. Your lungs branch the same way. Your blood vessels do, too. And your neurons, the cells that make you you, branch in that same pattern. It's not an accident. It is efficiency. It's information flow. It's distribution. It's beauty with purpose. But it's also a kind of signature. It's the universe signing its name in everything it makes. That's what a fractal is. A pattern that keeps echoing itself across different scales. And once you start to see it, you can unsee it. Spiral galaxies above, spiral shells below. The branching of frost on glass, the branching of thought in a human mind. So here is a gentle thought. If reality keeps building itself through repeating patterns, then maybe consciousness does too. Maybe what you call my inner world is just consciousness branching in you, the way lightning branches in a storm cloud. And that means something you might not realize yet. You aren't separate from the larger pattern. You are the larger pattern, expressed locally, which sounds poetic, sure. But it's also practical, because it means that when you are overwhelmed, it's not a failure of you. It's a signal in the field. When you are anxious to the point of shaking, or numb to the point of floating, or sad to the point of collapse, your nervous system is just broken. It's broadcasting. It's sending a message through the structure. Something in the pattern is under strain here. And instead of meeting that with shame, why can I hold it together? You can meet it with care. This branch needs support. Support does mean fixing everything at once. Support means feeding the branch, letting it rest, letting it reconnect, letting it receive input from the wider system again. You do that more often than you think, and usually in ways you don't give yourself credit for. Think about the last time you stepped outside just to breathe, or put on a song you did. Do you have words for? You just needed the feeling, or leaned your forehead against someone. Shoulder without explaining anything, or stared out a window and let your mind go soft. People call that zoning out. But what if it's not zoning out? What if it's sinking back in? When you soften like that, you are not doing nothing. You are letting your local pattern, your branch, fall back into rhythm with the larger pattern. You are re-entering coherence. This is why certain moments feel like relief, even if nothing in your life has technically changed yet. Not because the problem is solved, but because, for a second, you are not exiled from the field. You are back in it. Even one slow breath can do this. Go ahead and try one now, wherever you are. In gentle, hold out, even gentler. Not dramatic, not performative, just kind. Notice how your awareness can widen a little on the exhale. Your body doesn't disappear, but you are not trapped only inside the tight part of it anymore. You can feel a little more space around everything. That widening, that more room feeling, is just you zooming out a level, shifting scale. And that right there is a key you can use. Because here is one of the quiet gifts of thinking of consciousness as fractal. When you feel trapped inside one layer, you can move, you can zoom. Most of us don't know that it's possible. We get locked into one layer. The mental story layer, or the emotional wave layer, or the body sensation layer. And we think, this is reality. But it's only one scale. You're allowed to adjust scale. Sometimes that means zooming in. Sometimes it means zooming out. Zooming in sounds like, I'm not going to think about my entire life right now. I'm just going to feel my hands get warm. I'm just going to notice the weight of the blanket. I'm just going to let my jaw soften. Tiny focus, micro pattern. One branch tip, zooming out sounds like, yes, this hurts, but this moment is not the entire sky. I am having this feeling, but I am not only this feeling. There is sadness in me, and also breath in me, and also awareness of both. Panoramic focus macro, pattern, the whole tree. Both are forms of self-regulation. Both are valid. Both are already in you. And here's something beautiful. This scaling ability is not imagination. It's literally how your nervous system stabilizes itself. When you zoom in and anchor to a simple sensory detail, you are lowering cognitive load. You are telling your system, we don't have to solve everything at once. Just be here. That interrupts spiraling. When you zoom out and rest as awareness itself, I notice the waves, but I am not only the waves. You are shifting into observer mode. That interrupts identification. One calms chaos. The other calms fear. You can move between them like stepping stones. That movement is intelligence, and you were born with it. Now, let's go a layer deeper into pattern and identity. Your sense of self feels stable, like a solid me. But if you sit very still and listen to it carefully, I'll notice it's actually built from repeating loops. I always do this. People like me are like that. I can trust. I have to handle everything myself. I'm fine. I'm fine. I am fine. Those loops feel like truth because you've reheard them so many times. But repetition is not truth. Repetition is just reinforcement. In fractal terms, you've retraced that spiral so often that it's now etched at every scale. It shows up in how you talk to yourself when you wake up. It shows up in how you react when someone texts you. It shows up in how you tense when things go quiet. It shows up in how you plan your future. Same curve, different sizes. Which means, and this matters, you do not have to fix your whole life to begin shifting it. You can begin by editing the smallest version of the loop. A tiny upgrade repeated gently starts to alter the pattern at every level. Not, I have to be positive. Not forcing gratitude, you don't. Something humbler, truer, like, it is okay to not be okay in this moment. Or, I am allowed to not carry this alone. Or, it's safe to pause for one breath. Or this reaction makes sense, given what I've lived. Those aren't T-affirmations, they re-permission slips. And when you offer yourself permission instead of pressure, your system loosens. The pattern loosens, and once it loosens, it can move. Movement is life. Stuck pattern is suffering. Moving pattern is healing. This is also why shame freezes people. Shame doesn't teach us hurt emotionally. Shame locks a pattern in place. It says, don't move. Don't change. Don't be seen while you are still messy. Shame tries to trap you inside one tiny corner of the fractal and convince you that as the entire you. But it isn't, It's never been, even at your worst moment, even in the version of you are most afraid to revisit. You were still made of more than that one loop. There was still openness in you somewhere. Still awareness, still a witness. Still a witness, still a longing to feel safe, still a softness that never really left. That softness is evidence of the larger pattern. Call it soul, call it presence, call it original nature. The name does matter. What matters is that it has always stayed with you, even when you couldn't access it. Because you are not only what happened to you, you are also what kept you alive through it. And that is part of the universal pattern, too. Let's stretch one more direction. Picture a spiral galaxy, massive, bright, at the center. Arms curling outward in long arcs. Now picture a seashell, the kind you pick up on a quiet beach. That same spiral form, tight in the middle, opening as it expands. Now picture the spiral of your own growth. You are not going in circles, even if it feels like it. You are not back where you started. You are revisiting similar themes at a wider radius. That argument you are having with yourself again. That insecurity that came back, that ache you thought you were done with. It's not proof that you failed. It's proof that you are meeting the same lesson at a new layer of depth. Closer to the center last time. Wider orbit this time. More perspective now. More skill now. More awareness now. Same curve. Different level. That's how living things learn. That's how nervous systems unwind. That's how patterns release. Not in a straight line, but in a widening spiral. So when you say, "Oh, I am here again," I want you to try, just once, to also say, "Yes, but I'm not the same me that was here last time." Because that's true. You are not the same. Even if the emotion feels the same. Even if the fear feels the same. Even if the loneliness feels the same. You are bringing a new layer of awareness to it now. And awareness is the pattern that heals patterns. That's why, in the quiet moments, after the noise settles, something in you keeps reaching for presence, keeps longing for stillness, keeps craving connection that feels honest and warm and gentle. That longing is not weakness. That longing is orientation. It's your internal compass, turning you toward home. Home, not as a house. Home, not as a memory. Home as, I am part of something larger, and I can feel it again. And when you touch that, even for a few seconds at a time, nervous system tension unclenches, mental loops pause, breath deepens without being told to deepen. Muscles stop holding emergency posture, time slows. That's not mystical. That's regulation. That's coherence. That's a branch settling into the tree again. And the more often you let yourself land there, softly, briefly, without forcing it, the more familiar it becomes. The more available it becomes, the more natural it becomes to return, even in the middle of stress. Which means that connection to the larger field is not some distant state you achieve someday. It's a state you can visit right now, in micro doses, one breath at a time, one moment of real honesty at a time, one tiny act of self-permission at a time, one safe connection at a time, because awareness is already here, and you are already in it. Notice something else when you are calm. Really calm, not fake, smiling calm, but quietly. In your body calm, other people can feel it. You be seen this? You watched someone walk into a room, and without saying a word, the whole room softened. Voices lowered, shoulders dropped. The space felt safer. And you? Be seen the opposite too. Someone walks in with a nervous system on fire, and that fire spreads instantly. Everyone gets a little tight, a little sharper, a little more careful. We tend to think of moods as private. They re-knot, they re-relational, they ripple. Your state is not just happening inside you. It's broadcasting like a signal, and the people around you, especially the people closest to you, can pick that up and sync to it. That can sound like pressure, like, "Oh, great, so now I'm responsible for everyone. It's regulation forever." Number that. It's not the point. The point is this. You are not isolated. Your nervous system is tea floating alone in a jar, trying to survive on self. Talk. It's networked. It co-regulates. It shares patterns. It stabilizes with other systems and gets destabilized with other systems. You are part of an emotional ecosystem, which means two things. First, you are allowed to need other people. Needing comfort, needing presence, needing to lean on somebody is not a weakness in your design. It is your design. Second, you are allowed to be someone whose presence is medicine, not by fixing anyone, not by performing wisdom, not by saying, "It's all going to be okay," but simply by sitting in your own settledness and letting that resonance become available. Being regulated in front of someone dysregulated is not showing off. It's offering a hand. You're saying, "Here is a calmer rhythm. If your body wants to borrow it, it can." That's all. And you've felt that too. You've been held in silence by someone who didn't try to cheer you up or give advice. They just stayed. They stayed honest. They stayed warm. And somehow your storm wasn't quite as violent anymore. That's field work. That nervous system to nervous system communication. That consciousness sinking across two bodies. This is one of the quiet reasons loneliness hurts as much as it does. It's not just no one is here to talk to. It's My system has to hold this alone with no other rhythm to lean on. That's exhausting. It is also why even the smallest real moment of connection feels like relief. A short hug, a voice message that feels sincere, not polite. Someone putting a cup of water in your hand and saying, "Drink." Tiny things can pull you back to yourself because they remind your body. You are not floating in the dark. You are still inside the pattern. You are still part of us. Let's sit with that for a moment. You are part of us. Even if you don't, you'd always feel like it. Even if you've been made to feel like too much. Even if you've been made to feel like not enough. You are part of us. Your existence creates ripples that enter other nervous systems, whether you notice or not. Which means, just by being here, you matter in a way that is not theoretical. It's biological, energetic, structural. And that brings us to attention. Because attention is how you sculpt the pattern from the inside. Where you place attention is what you amplify. This is not just think positive. This is much deeper than that. This is structural. Attention is nourishment. Attention is signal strength. When you keep feeding attention to a fear loop, that loop strengthens. The branch thickens. It claims more territory. Not because you want it, not because you are weak, but because your system assumes if you are looking at this constantly, it must be important for survival. When you never, ever give attention to safety. When you never pause and actually register, right now, I am physically safe in this room. Your body does to get that data. So it assumes safety is unreliable, rare, fragile. Even in moments where you are, in fact, okay? In other words, you can literally be safe and still feel unsafe because you never let your nervous system update the file. That's not your fault. Most of us were never taught how to update. We were taught how to endure. So let's practice something incredibly small, not grateful. For everything, not forcing. Light, just neutral truth, right now, wherever you are. Scan your environment for one signal of safety. Just one, it might be. I can feel solid support under my body. I can move my fingers freely. No one is yelling at me in this moment. The air I am breathing is enough. I have water next to me. I am allowed to pause right now without being punished. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you have to stretch to believe. Just one true, present, tense safety signal. That's it, when you notice it. Don't rush past it. Let your body have 5 seconds with it. That's all. What you are doing in those 5 seconds is feeding a new branch. You are saying to your system, safety exists sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. Here is proof. And the system listens, slowly, quietly. Suspicious at first, then curious, then receptive. This is how you build capacity. Not by demanding calm, by resourcing calm. There is a difference. Demand is, why am I not okay? I should be okay. Be okay right now. Resource is, here is something that feels the tiniest bit okay. I'm going to let myself have it for a breath. Demand tightens. Resource nourishes. And nourishment changes structure over time. When you keep giving even tiny bits of attention to what S steady, what S kind, what S here, your baseline shifts. You become less easily yanked into panic spikes, less easily swallowed by emotional waves, less easily convinced that a passing thought is a prophecy. You start having space, and with space comes choice. Choice is one of the purest expressions of consciousness. When you are completely flooded, you don't feel like you have choice. Your reactions run you. Your fear runs you. Your memory of past pain runs you. You are just surviving the moment. But when there's a little more space, even a few extra seconds before the reaction fires, you can do something miraculous. You can respond instead of just react. Responding sounds like, I want to say something sharp right now, but I'm going to breathe first. I feel abandoned, but I'm going to ask for reassurance instead of disappearing. I want to shut down, but I'm going to tell them. I'm overwhelmed, not vanish without a word. That is pattern editing in real time. Not perfection, not enlightenment. Just one micro choice that wasn't T available to you before. That S growth. Growth is not never getting triggered. Growth is the trigger doesn't T own me as completely as it used to. Let's take this even further and get slightly cosmic for a moment, because you are capable of that. When people talk about higher self, it can sound mystical and distant, like some glowing, perfected version of you floating above your head, sighing patiently while you mess things up. That framing can feel kind of punishing, like you are always disappointing the better you. But what if higher self is not better, not morally superior, not purer, not holier? What if higher self is just wider, less compressed into one moment, one panic, one identity? What if higher self is simply you, with more context, like zooming out on a map and seeing not just the street you are on, but the neighborhood, the city, the way out, in moments when you feel clarity, that quiet click of, oh, this is what I actually need. You are not summoning some distant angelic version of yourself. You are accessing the wider field that was already there, the you with context, the you who can love the frightened part without becoming only the frightened part. The you who can see the pattern without shaming the pattern, that is accessible. That is not fantasy. In fact, you've already touched it dozens of times in your life. You felt it when you comforted a younger kid. Maybe a little cousin, maybe your own child, maybe the younger version of you in an old memory, and you knew exactly what to say. And it came out of you soft and steady. That was wider. You felt it when you were heartbroken, and some calm place in you whispered, "This will not kill me. It feels like it will, but at one T." That was wider. You felt it when you were overwhelmed, and suddenly you were like, "Okay, step one, drink water." That wasn't traumatic wisdom. That was wider. You organizing the local chaos so you could move. So the question is not, how do I become that self? The question is, how do I return there a little more often without waiting for crisis to force it? And the answer is, again, attention, ritualized attention, not in a religious sense. In an architectural sense, little repeatable behaviors that tell your system, we are checking in with the wider field now. You are basically creating doorways you can keep walking through. It can be as simple as hand over heart for 10 seconds in the morning before you touch your phone. Not to force gratitude, just to say, "Hi, I'm here with you." Or lifting your shoulders up, holding tension for 3 seconds, then letting them drop on the exhale. Telling your body, you can set this down for one breath. Or sitting on the floor at the end of the day, letting your back rest against something solid, and saying out loud, even in a whisper, "That was a lot. We made it." These don't too seem like much. They are much, because what you repeat becomes structure. What you ritualize becomes accessible under stress. And what becomes accessible under stress becomes who you can be in the moments that matter. That is how healing actually installs. Not as an idea you agree with, as a pathway your nervous system knows how to walk. One last thing, and it's important, you are not behind. In fractal time, there's no behind. There's only I am at this layer of the spiral right now. Someone else might be at a different radius. That doesn't make them better. That just means their lessons are shaped differently in this moment. Your work right now might be learning how to feel anything at all after years of numbing. That is sacred work. Your work might be letting yourself rest without guilt. That is sacred work. Your work might be telling the truth to yourself about something you've been pretending. Does T hurt? That's sacred work. Your work might be receiving care without flinching. Sacred work. Your work might be unlearning the reflex to apologize for existing. Sacred work. This is not small. This is not basic. This is structural reconstruction. You are literally editing pathways through which consciousness expresses itself through you. That is holy. And as you do it, the pattern changes in you, in the people around you, and in the quiet places that connect all of us. Because you are not just in the pattern, you are part of how it evolves. So here's where we get honest. There's a story a lot of people carry that sounds like, Once I heal, I'll never struggle like this again. It's such a seductive promise. The idea that one day you'll wake up and the ache will be gone, the fear will be gone, the overthinking will be gone, the old patterns will be gone, and I'll just glide, calm, untouchable, finished. But that's not actually how living works. Life doesn't ask you to delete your pain. Life asks you to develop a different relationship with it. You don't become someone who never feels overwhelmed. You become someone who can notice, overwhelm is here, without collapsing into, I am overwhelmed. That tiny difference changes everything, because when you merge with the state, I am panic, I am worthless, I am broken. It feels permanent, defining, absolute. You forget that it's weather, you start treating it like identity. But when you can say, panic is present in me right now, instead of, I am panic, it creates a little bit of distance. Not dissociation, spaciousness. The same way you can say, it's raining, without believing the rain is now who you are forever. That space is compassion space. That's the space where you can ask, what do you need? Instead of, what's wrong with you? That's the space where you can offer care instead of punishment. That's the space where you stop being the battlefield and start being the caregiver who walks onto the field. And you don't have to be calm to be the caregiver. You just have to be willing to be kind to yourself in the middle of the mess. That willingness is the doorway. Most people think the doorway is peace. It's not. It's gentleness. Gentleness is what allows integration. Shame freezes it, and this matters because you cannot bully yourself into healing. You can knuckle your behavior for a little while. You can force compliance for a few days. You can perform, okay, but you cannot scare your nervous system into safety. That's not how biology works. Safety is not the result of threat. Safety is the result of safety. Which sounds obvious, but think about how many of us were taught the opposite. Get it together. Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Fix your face. You are too sensitive. You are being dramatic. That's not regulation. That's suppression. Suppression can look strong from the outside. It can even get praised. But inside, suppression just shoves the shaking into a deeper layer, and the shaking waits. It waits in the jaw. It waits in the stomach. It waits in the shoulders. It waits in the breath. You never take all the way down. And then, years later, it leaks. As rage that feels disproportionate, as numbness you can as exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, as I don't to know why I feel like I might cry all the time. But I do. That's not you being dramatic. That's backlog. Backlog needs processing. Processing needs safety. Safety needs gentleness. This is the math. That's why one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to stop calling your own needs too much and start calling them data. I can. To handle that conversation right now is data. I shut down when people yell is data. I get anxious when plans change last minute is data. I need reassurance sometimes is data. I get overwhelmed in crowds is data. Data is neutral. It's not a moral judgment. When you treat your own signals as data instead of defects, something soft unlocks. You stop spending energy lying to yourself about what you can and cannot tolerate. You stop pretending you are okay just to keep belonging. You stop betraying your nervous system just to make other people comfortable. And little by little, you'll begin to belong to yourself. Here is the beautifully strange part. When you belong to yourself, you actually become more available to others, not less. People worry, if I start honoring what I need, I'm going to turn selfish and cold. Usually, the opposite happens. When you stop bleeding out from constant self-abandonment, you have energy again, presence again, warmth again. You can give in a way that is tea secretly draining you dry. You can love without disappearing. That kind of love is clean. It is resentful. It doesn't score. It doesn't come with a quiet invoice attached. It says, I can give you this much, honestly. It also says, I cannot give you more than that, honestly. It trusts you with the truth. That honesty might feel scary at first, especially if you've been shaped to believe that love means self-erasure. But that honesty is the kind of frequency that actually sustains bonds instead of hollowing them out. This is where we start talking about resonance again. Not just nervous system to nervous system, but truth to truth. When you stand in your truth without aggression, you create an invitation. You are saying, it is safe to be real here. And that's rare. Most people don't get that often. Most people spend an entire day, sometimes an entire life, bending, masking, bracing, micromanaging how they re-perceived, and calling that. They were not fine, they were just practiced. You offering real regulated honesty, especially quiet honesty, is like oxygen. I'm overwhelmed, but I want to stay connected. I just need a slower pace. I care about you, and I can talk about this topic tonight. I love you, and the tone you are using is putting my body into defense. Can we soften this together, or pause? This is advanced nervous system work. Not because it's fancy, because it's vulnerable. It's easy to shut down. It's easy to explode. It's hard to stay in connection and ask for repair while you are still in your body. That's skill, that's capacity, that's evolution. Now, zoom out even more with me, because this is where it gets quietly profound. Every time you do that, every time you choose repair over withdrawal, clarity over pretending, soft boundary over self, abandonment, you are not just helping that single moment, you are literally editing the pattern for whoever comes after you. Think generationally. If you grew up around yelling, unpredictability, guilt is control, love that felt like walking on thin ice, then you already know. Patterns don't just live in individuals. They live in families, in cultures, in communities. You didn't invent those dynamics. You inherited them. But here is the part you might not hear enough. The moment you do something different, the moment you interrupt that pattern with presence, the moment you offer repair instead of punishment, you are doing generational work. When you take a breath instead of snapping, when you apologize sincerely without collapsing into shame, when you say, it's okay to feel upset, you are allowed to feel upset to someone smaller than you. That is you being a pattern breaker. That is you pruning what no longer serves and protecting what does. That is you becoming an ancestor in real time. Any future person who grows up in the field you are shaping, a kid, a partner, a friend, even an inner younger version of you, will live inside a pattern that is softer because you existed. And you don't have to be a parent for that to be true. Your presence still alters the field. Your healing still plants a flag. Steadier than it used to be, becomes a reference point for someone else who has, maybe never in their entire life, been near calm that didn't feel like silence before. Impact. That matters. It matters on levels you don't get to fully see. So if you've ever said it feels like I am doing all this work and it's invisible, I want you to hear this clearly. It is not invisible. It is infrastructural. You are laying circuitry. And circuitry is not flashy. It is not loud. It's the quiet layer that makes everything else function. People don't praise wiring in the walls, but without it, nothing turns on. That's you. You are not behind. You are early. You are building conditions that someone else will casually live inside and call normal, having no idea what it cost you. And that's okay. They don't have to know for it to be worth it. Now breathe. Feel that. Because I want you to take in one more thing, and you don't have to believe it all the way yet. Just let it sit nearby. You are allowed to receive softness, not just generate it. You are not only here to regulate everyone else. You are not only here to be the calm one. You are not only here to be the sturdy one. You are allowed to rest in someone else steadiness without earning it. You are allowed to say, "Can you sit with me? I don't too need advice. I just don't want to be alone right now." You are allowed to say, "Can you hold my hand for a minute?" You are allowed to cry in front of someone safe and not apologize for leaking. You are allowed to be the one held. For some people, that is actually the next frontier of growth. Not more independence, more allowing, because hyper-independence is just trauma-wearing competence as armor. It looks admirable, it even gets praised. But inside, it's lonely. Letting yourself lean in small ways, safe ways, chosen ways, is not weakness. It's regulation through trust. And trust is extremely advanced work. It means, I'm going to let you matter to me, even though that means you could hurt me. That's terrifying, that's sacred, and that is also how the pattern heals. Last thing for now, stay with me here. When you zoom way out, past your habits, past your story, past what happened to you, even past your name, there is this hum. Call it awareness, call it source, call it field, call it consciousness, call it presence. The word doesn't T-mat, the experience does. That hum isn't T judging you. It isn't T rushing you. It isn't T disappointed in you for not being farther along. It's not like that. It's more like a constant warmth that never withdraws, even when you are in a spiral. It's the you that watches the panic without becoming only the panic. It's the witness you can sometimes feel in the background, even in the worst moments. The part that whispers, stay with me. We're still here. That's not imaginary. That's you expanded. And you can return to that place, not permanently, not like a trophy, but again and again, moment by moment, breath by breath. That is a practice, not a performance. And that practice, gently, patiently, imperfectly repeated, is how you live inside a nervous system that no longer treats love like danger, stillness like laziness, rest like failure, and softness like shame. That practice is how you become a safe place to land. For yourself first, and then, naturally, for the world around you. So maybe tonight, before you sleep, you don't have to solve anything. Maybe you just place a hand on your own body and say, silently or out loud, "Hey, I am here." Not, "I'll fix you." Not, "I am disappointed in you." Just, "I am here." Because sometimes that's all the system needed to hear to start repairing. Not a lecture, not a plan. Just proof. You are not alone inside yourself anymore. And that's where the next layer begins. Because once you are no longer alone inside yourself, something subtle shifts in the field around you. You start noticing that certain situations feel different in your body than others. Certain rooms make your shoulders creep up. Certain voices make your stomach tighten. Certain people feel like walking into air conditioning on a humid day. Before, all that might be just felt like mood. Random now. You start realizing it. It's information. Your body has always been reading the room. You just finally stopped yelling at it long enough to hear what it was saying. And here is the wild, beautiful part. The more you listen to your own system without shaming it, the more clearly you begin to sense what environments are genuinely regulating for you, and which ones are secretly eroding you. It's like turning up the contrast knob on a picture. Suddenly the edges sharpen. You can see which patterns are nourishing and which are repeating harm. And that right there is one of the most sacred skills you'll ever build. Because most of us were taught early to override, to tolerate what feels bad, to normalize tension, to ignore our first signals because we should be okay, or because other people seem fine, or because speaking up would create conflict we were afraid to cause. We learned to convince ourselves, this isn't that bad, I can handle it. I'm being dramatic, I just need to get used to it. But that voice wasn't wisdom. That was survival, narrating. Wisdom sounds different. Wisdom sounds like something in me is shrinking here. Wisdom sounds like I leave this conversation feeling small. Wisdom sounds like, I don't to feel held. I feel managed. Wisdom sounds like, my nervous system does not feel safe in this dynamic, and I'm done pretending it does. And when you let that wisdom speak without shutting it down, you start doing something nobody taught you how to do. You begin to choose your patterns on purpose. Not perfectly, not instantly, but on purpose. You begin to recognize, oh, this relationship I keep finding myself in, this is the same loop, different face, same frequency, different storyline. This is the same old hunger wearing new clothes. And instead of blaming yourself or blaming the other person or trying to perform your way into being wanted, you pause. That pause is evolution, because up until that point, you weren't T-pausing. You were repeating. That, how patterns work. They just run. They just fire. They just play the track you were handed and call it fate. But the second you see it, the second you actually hear yourself think, I know this. I've lived this. I don't want to keep living this. V stepped out of autopilot. Awareness is not the end of the work, but it is the end of unconsciousness. And that shift, that click from I am inside the loop, and I think this is just reality, to, oh, wait, this is a loop, is huge. Genuinely huge. Because you cannot interrupt a pattern you can. TC, you cannot heal a rhythm you be mistaken for truth. There is a word for this kind of repeating structure. You've heard it already. Fractal. A fractal is a pattern that echoes at different scales. Tiny version, medium version, big version. Same structure, different size. And if you really look at your own life, you'll notice that how our emotional patterns behave too. That fight with your partner that always ends the same way. That friendship where you always become the caretaker. That habit of saying, yes, of course, even when every cell is screaming, please no. That deep, quiet belief that love is something you earn, not something you are allowed to rest in. Zoom in, it shows up in one moment. Zoom out, it shows up across a decade. Same shape, different scale. You could call that dysfunctional, you could call that broken, or you could call it what it really is. Evidence of what you were trained to expect. Evidence of what you thought you had to be. Evidence of the terms you believed were the price of being allowed to stay. This is not personal failure. This is the inheritance. But here's where it becomes personal power. You can alter it. Not all at once. Not with a single dramatic act. Not with never again. Promises shouted into the mirror. At 2 a.m., you alter a fractal. The same way you alter a nervous system. Gently, repeatedly, in small present, moment revisions. When you say, actually, I need a minute. Instead of swallowing and pushing through. When you say, that tone doesn't work for me. Quietly, without shaking. When you say, that's not my job anymore. Without apology. When you ask, can you reassure me? Before you spiral alone and call yourself needy. Do you feel how that's not flashy? Do you feel how that's not cinematic? Do you feel how no one else might even notice? That's how deep pattern work really looks. It doesn't always look like walking away from everything and starting a whole new life in the mountains. Sometimes it looks like staying right where you are and moving differently inside the conversation you've had 100 times. That shift in movement is you bending the geometry. That shift in movement is you altering the fractal. Because once the pattern changes at one scale, it ripples. Change it in one moment, and slowly it becomes possible to change it in the day. Change it in the day, and slowly it becomes possible to change it in the season. Change it in the season, and slowly a year feels different than the years that came before it. That's how we become different people. Not through force, through repetition of mercy. Mercy is not the same thing as letting everything slide. Mercy is not self-abandonment dressed up as forgiveness. Mercy is not it's fine when it's not fine. Mercy is honest and soft at the same time. Mercy sounds like, I love you, but I will not tolerate being spoken to like that anymore. I care about this connection, and I want to keep participating in this dynamic. I understand where your pain comes from. and I am not volunteering to be the ground you discharge it into. That is mercy. For you, and weirdly, for them. Because enabling someone's unhealed pattern is not kindness. It just teaches them that their pattern works. Boundary is not punishment. Boundary is accurate math. And accurate math is one of the highest forms of respect you can offer another human being. It says, I'm going to show you where I end and where you begin so neither of us has to live in confusion. Now, here is where we bring it all the way home. When you start living like this, with presence, with self, belonging, with honest boundaries that don't require rage to enforce, your internal world becomes less chaotic, not silent, not numb, less chaotic. The static drops a little. The signal comes through. You feel little pockets of ease where it used to be constant bracing. You feel little openings in your chest where it used to be tight all the time. You feel your jaw unclench in moments you didn't know it was always clenched. And that is not imaginary. That is nervous system re-patterning. That is fascia letting go. That is cortisol tapering instead of flooding. That is your body saying, thank you for not leaving me alone with it this time. And because your internal world starts to settle, you gain access to something most of us haven't felt since we were very, very small. Quiet aliveness. Not hype, not adrenaline, not I'm so motivated. Just this low, steady hum of I'm okay. I can feel myself. That hum is not laziness. That hum is not boredom. That hum is regulation. That hum is the state your body was designed to live in most of the time before it got drafted into survival mode, on a near constant loop. And this is where consciousness stops being a concept and becomes direct experience. Because when you are in that hum, you can actually feel, not just think. Feel that you are part of something larger than just your current worry. You can feel how you are not just a little isolated mind in a stressed body. You are part of an ongoing field. And this loops us all the way back to pattern. Because whether you talk about it spiritually, biologically, or poetically, the truth is the same. You are a repeating part of a repeating pattern in a repeating universe. Your heartbeat is a rhythm. Your breath is a wave. Your thoughts are electrical storms. Your relationships are feedback loops. Your healing is a spiral, and none of that is random. Every spiral in nature, from a hurricane to a seashell to a galaxy, is made of motion and held by structure at the same time. Flow and container, wildness and boundary. Your healing is the same. It is not about becoming rigid. It is not about becoming formless. It is about letting yourself move honestly inside something that can actually hold you. That something might be a practice. It might be a phrase you tell yourself at 3 a.m. It might be that steady hum over time. That hum, that regulated presence, stops being rare. It becomes home base. And once you have a home base, you don't fear dysregulation as much because you are not afraid it as permanent anymore. You know the way back. That one of the most soothing things you can ever learn. I can leave safety and I can return to safety. My system knows the path. That knowing right there, that trust. Trust in your capacity. Trust in your ability to feel without being swallowed. And underneath that trust is something even deeper, something older than language, older than memory, a kind of quiet belonging to existence itself. The sense that I am allowed to be here. Not I earned being here. Not I proved I deserve being here. Just I am allowed to be here. That's the root. That's the root of the root. Because once you feel that, even for a few seconds at a time, you are no longer negotiating for permission to exist. You are no longer auditioning. You are no longer hustling to justify your own presence. You are living as presence, and presence is what heals patterns. Presence is what interrupts generations of reactivity. Presence is what turns survival into actual life. So for now, as you settle, as your body gets a little heavier against whatever's supporting you, maybe you let yourself soften into this one simple truth. You don't have to become some other version of you to be worthy of rest. You don't have to finish healing to deserve gentleness. You don't have to earn the right to exhale. You are allowed to exhale now. You can even try it. Slowly. In through the nose, hold for a beat. Out through the mouth like you are fogging a mirror. Feel how the out breath is a tiny letting go. That's all this work is. Tiny letting go, again and again, until your body believes you. And if part of you whispers, but what if I lose everything? What if people leave when I start honoring myself? What if I am alone? Then we tell that part the truth. Some people may leave. Some patterns will fall apart. Some versions of you will dissolve, and they will not come back. And that will feel like grief. Let it, because what grows in the space that opens after that grief isn't emptiness. It's just the first stable ground that is actually yours. The first steady field that doesn't demand you disappear to be loved. The first version of ease that does come with a price tag. The first relationship where you don't have to shrink to fit. And once you touch that, once you even brush against it, you will understand. In your bones, what we've been circling this entire time, you were never the problem. The pattern was inherited. But the pattern can end with you, not in violence, in gentleness, not in shame, in truth, not in isolation. In connection, first with yourself, and then with everything that resonates with the real you. That's the quiet revolution. That's the new geometry. That's the moment the fractal shifts. And you are allowed to rest inside that shift. And from here, something interesting starts to happen. Once you even taste that steady ground, even for a moment. Your sense of self stops being this tiny flickering candle in a storm and starts feeling more like a field, not a costume you are wearing, not a performance you are maintaining. A field. It's almost like you can feel your presence extend past the edges of your skin. You can feel yourself take up space in the room in a way that is loud, aggressive, look at me, but simply, I am here. It's quiet power, and quiet power is very different from control. Control says, if I can just manage every variable, I'll be safe. Quiet power says, I can survive moments I cannot manage. Control keeps you tight. Quiet power lets you soften. Control burns you out. Quiet power sustains you. And the way you start to cultivate that quiet power, that sense of being anchored instead of braced, is not with grand declarations, but with very small agreements you keep with yourself. Not self-improvement goals. Self-trust rituals. Tiny things that tell your nervous system, I will not abandon you anymore. For example, I will drink water before I dissociate for 4 hours on my phone. I will unclench my jaw when I notice I am clenching. Instead of calling myself dramatic for having tension, I will leave the room for 2 minutes when I feel that familiar heat in my chest, instead of forcing myself to sit there and smile through it. I will say, 1 second, when I get overwhelmed, instead of pretending I'm fine while my pulse is punching the inside of my throat. These are quiet moves. They look like nothing. They look like nothing to anyone else. But to your body, they are proof. Proof that you are no longer choosing the world over yourself every single time. Proof that you are willing to pause the reflex to keep everyone else comfortable at your own expense. Proof that you are not going to keep throwing yourself under the bus and calling it kindness. Your biology notices that. Your biology keeps score. And this is where it becomes almost mathematical. Every time you override your own truth to keep the peace, your system learns, my safety does not matter. Every time you override your no, your system learns, we are not protected. Every time you betray your exhaustion just to appear dependable, your system learns. Rest is dangerous, but every single time, you pause and say, hold on, I am at capacity. Your system learns. Oh, we reprotected now. That tiny correction is you editing the code. And when you keep editing the code, when you keep repeating those micro acts of self-honesty in real time, eventually something shifts so deep you almost don't recognize it the first time it happens. A moment comes where you are triggered, and you don't leave yourself. You still feel your face get hot. You still feel your heart climb into your mouth. You still feel the old story start to spin. But you don't vanish. You are still in there. That right there is not nothing. That right there is evolution in the nervous system. That is a signal traveling through you without taking you hostage. That is what regulated aliveness actually feels like. It's not. I never get upset anymore. It's S. I can stay with myself while I'm upset. That is freedom, because what really hurts, what really drains us, is not just the stressful moment itself. It's the recovery after. It's the hours, days, even weeks spent repairing the fracture of I bailed on myself again in order to keep it calm. Staying with yourself during the moment means less cleanup after, less collapse after, less shame after, less... Why did I say that, Tootie? Why didn't I say that? Replay loop at 1:40 a.m. while you are staring at the ceiling. So no, the work is not about never getting dysregulated. The work is about making dysregulation survivable, and making it survivable is what lets your system stop living in permanent defense. When your system stops living in permanent defense, something opens. That opening is where you start to feel connected to more than just me inside this body. You start to feel connected to pattern, to rhythm, to scale, to the repeating shapes in everything, to the way your breath sounds like a tide if you listen long enough, to the way your heartbeat syncs to someone else. It's when you sit close to them quietly for a while, to the way trees all subtly lean toward light, and you, without thinking, keep leaning toward places that offer you even a little warmth. This is where the language of fractal stops being poetic and becomes practical. Because you begin to see that your healing is not isolated. It's not just me fixing me. It has you altering a geometry that extends beyond you. Let's say for most of your life, you learned. I only receive attention when I am useful. That becomes a shape. That shape turns into behaviors. Over, giving, caretaking, anticipatory soothing, emotional labor you were never actually asked to do. You just did it automatically because it felt like oxygen. Now, watch what happens when you interrupt that. Not forever, just once. Someone sighs heavily around you. Your instinct is to rush in and say, "Are you okay? What do you need? Did I do something? Can I fix it?" But instead, you breathe. You soften your shoulders. You wait. That pause is microscopic. From the outside, nobody sees it. But internally, you just decline to reenact the shape. You just refuse to activate the "if I manage their emotional state, I'll stay safe" program. You just stopped feeding a pattern that would kept you in resentment later. That one pause is not just for you. That one pause changes the relational field. Because when you don't, you jump in to rescue. The other person is left with their own feeling. And in that exact moment, they, possibly for the first time, might actually have to feel it instead of offloading it into you. That's not cold. That's clean. And whether they know it or not, that's an invitation for them to update too. In that way, boundary is just self-protection. Boundary is an offering. Boundary is an opportunity for the pattern to stop using you as fuel. You are not just healing you. You are interrupting an ecosystem. When you do that 1,000 times over a year, you don't even always notice when it changed. You just wake up one morning and realize, my relationships feel quieter. I'm not constantly braced. I don't feel like a live wire anymore. I'm not performing closeness just to avoid abandonment. And here is where the cosmic part creeps in, softly, because as that relational electricity settles, as those old survival strategies loosen their grip, your awareness spreads out. You start to sense that you exist inside layers. There is you, individual. There is you plus others, relational. There is you in the day, contextual. And then there is something bigger still, you in the pattern of existence. And even if you don't have language for it, you can feel it. Sometimes it hits you in tiny moments. Washing your hands, looking at light moving across a wall, hearing a distant train at night, and feeling your whole body go warm for a reason you can name. It's this quiet recognition. I am inside something vast. That's not fantasy. That's coherence. That's nervous system safety meeting scale. When your body is constantly panicked, everything feels like crisis. The world shrinks to, this moment is everything. Time collapses into now. Now. But when your body is allowed moments of safety, you remember the long arc. You remember, this is a chapter, not the entire book. This feeling will move. This trigger is old data, and I am not that version of me anymore. And because you can remember that, you can let moments hurt without letting them define you. That alone changes how you move through reality. And now we can talk about something that sounds soft, but is actually radical. Tenderness. Tenderness is often dismissed as weakness, when in truth it's the state of being you can only access when you are not in immediate danger. You cannot feel tenderness while you are in full survival response. It's neurologically expensive. Your body won. T let you. So if you find yourself feeling tenderness for someone you love, for an animal, for a memory, for yourself, that is evidence that in that moment, even briefly, your body believes you are safe enough to allow softness. That right there is huge. Tenderness is proof of safety, not permanent safety, not perfect safety, enough safety and tenderness. When you let it in, does something important to the pattern. It rehumanizes you, because high alert turns you into function. Fight, freeze, fawn turns you into reaction. Tenderness lets you become a person again. Not a role, not a shield. A person with ache and warmth and longing and humor. A person who exists outside of usefulness. A person who is allowed to want. And now we land in the part most of us were never given permission to touch. Wanting. What do you want your life to feel like? Not what do you think you can get without being too much. Not what makes sense on paper. What does your nervous system quietly ache for? Slowness, stability, play, touch without tension, silence, being understood without over-explaining, being able to put something down and trust it will still be there later. Your longing is not childish. Your longing is a map. It's showing you the environments where you can actually regulate. It's showing you the conditions in which your system stops bracing and starts healing. It's showing you the geometry you are meant to live in. And here is where that ties directly back into fractals, into universal pattern, into what some people call consciousness and some people simply call aliveness. When you honor the shape that actually supports you, instead of forcing yourself into a shape that depletes you, you bring yourself back into resonance with the pattern you are part of. You move from distortion to harmony. You return to a frequency that is yours. You stop broadcasting panic and start humming presence. And presence is not passive. Presence is creative. Presence changes rooms. Presence changes dynamics. Presence changes what other people feel safe enough to admit out loud. You've felt this before. You've met people like this. Someone walks into a space and your shoulders drop. Someone sits with you and for some reason, you tell the truth without rehearsing it first. Someone hugs you and your body finally releases the tears it's been holding for months. Because suddenly, finally, it feels like it can. That's not magic. That's regulation. That's resonance. That's a nervous system that's not performing safety. It's generating it. And you can become that. Not for other people. Not as a job. Not as your new identity. Not as the healer or the grounded one that everyone leans on while you disappear again. Number, you can become that for yourself first. You can become the presence that you settle inside. You can become the one you soften around. You can become the one that's your own body. Finally. Once that happens, once your own system recognizes, oh, we were safe here, with us, with ourselves. The frantic scramble to be chosen quiets. You don't beg to be seen. You allow yourself to be experienced. You don't audition. You offer. You don't cling. You stand in the field of you, and those who can meet that field meet it, and those who can And yes, sometimes that drifting hurts. Of course it hurts. Loss is real, but loss inside self. Belonging is grief. Loss without self. Belonging is collapse. Grief moves. Collapse traps. You deserve movement. You deserve grief that flows and releases instead of swallowing you whole. You deserve the version of life where you are not bargaining with your own nervous system just to get through a day. So as you lie here sinking a little deeper into wherever you are resting, maybe let this next part land very softly. You don't have to keep carrying the entire pattern. You don't have to heal the whole lineage alone. You don't have to fix everyone around you. You don't have to be the translator for every room. You don't have to hold it all in your shoulders, in your gut, in your jaw. You are allowed to put some of it down. Not forever. Just right now. Just for this breath. In slow. Hold, gently, and then let it fall out like a small surrender. Notice that tiny release in your body. That is not laziness. That is not giving up. That is repair. That is you stepping back into the field of yourself instead of leaving yourself to go manage the whole world. Stay there, just for another breath. And another, because this soft, regulated, present awareness of I am here. I am allowed. I am not abandoning myself right now. This is the doorway. This is how pattern changes. This is how the next version of you is woven. Not in force, not in panic, not in desperation. In softness, you let yourself keep. In presence, you refuse to leave. In belonging, you no longer outsource. You can rest here. You are allowed to rest here. You are allowed to keep this. So as you settle here with yourself, let us pull the thread through everything we've been circling, because underneath all the language, nervous system, pattern, resonance, field, there is one truth sitting quietly with its hand raised. You are not broken. You are patterned. And patterns can be rewritten. The way you brace, the way you rush to soothe, the way you explain yourself to be allowed in a room, the way you apologize for having needs before you, even said the need out loud. None of that is evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you adapted. Your system learned how to survive the environment it was given. Your body made choices that kept you here, even if those choices are costing you now. They were intelligent when they formed, and we honor that. We don't shame the strategies that kept you alive. We thank them. And then gently, slowly we let them retire. Because at some point, survival shouldn't have to be your full time personality. At some point, you're allowed to move from I can endure anything to I deserve conditions that don't require endurance. At some point, the skill stops being I can tolerate pain and starts being I can recognize safety without flinching away from it. That last one is huge, because receiving safety, for a lot of people, is actually harder than surviving chaos. Chaos is familiar. Hypervigilance feels productive. Scanning feels like control. Being on alert feels like being responsible. But softness, support. Being held without earning it, letting someone care for you without paying them back with labor, caretaking, or emotional handling. That can feel almost physically wrong at first. Like you are doing something dangerous, and your body needs proof that it is not. So here's where we go from idea into practice, from sounds nice into somatically real. Let this be an invitation to try something very small and very real. The next time safe support shows up, when someone offers you warmth, don't deflect. Don't water it down. Don't say, it's nothing, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Just pause for a beat longer than usual. Let it touch you. Let your body actually register. Oh, that was care. For me, that is a rep. That single breath of allowing is not being needy. It's not being selfish. It is rehab for a system that has only ever known tension. It's how you teach your body. We are allowed to experience safety without instantly rejecting it. Safety, when repeated, becomes baseline. Baseline, when stabilized, becomes identity. And identity, when rooted in safety, becomes presence. That presence is what we talked about. The felt sense that you exist as a steady field, not a frantic signal, and from that presence, something beautiful happens. Your life stops being purely reactive. You are no longer just dodging, absorbing, managing, recovering. You start choosing, really choosing. Choosing what conversations you step into and which ones you do not. Choosing who you give access to your internal weather. Choosing who gets to stand close enough to touch your nervous system. Choosing which stories still get to name you and which stories are done. This is where the fractal truly shows itself as within. So without. If inside you is chaos, you unconsciously organize your world around chaos because it matches. If inside you is constant self-abandonment, you unconsciously bond with people who benefit from that because it feels familiar. If inside you is, I am only here to carry. The universe keeps handing you more to carry, not as punishment, as repetition, but when inside you starts to shift, when your inner baseline changes from panic with a smile to quiet and honest, when your reflex becomes check in with myself first instead of fix them first, when your body believes I am allowed to exist without translating myself into usefulness, the outer world rearranges to match. That not mystical, that S pattern recognition. You stop feeding certain connections. You stop rehearsing old emotional roles. You stop volunteering for pain dressed up as loyalty. And without realizing it, you stop fueling entire loops that used to drain you. That redirection of energy back toward yourself is not selfish. It is structural repair. And structural repair creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity creates direction. Direction creates movement. This is how you end up in a life that actually feels like yours. Instead of a life where you are just fulfilling an assignment no one asked if you wanted. You are not here to be the emotional shock absorber for everyone else's unprocessed intensity. You are not here to constantly translate yourself into something more palatable. You are not here to abandon yourself in the name of being easy to love. You are here to be in connection. Real connection with yourself, with others, and with something larger than both. Call that larger thing whatever sits right in your chest. Some people say source, some say consciousness, some just say the way it all fits together. It doesn't really matter what you name it. What matters is that you can feel it when you are quiet. In the moments where time loosens, the moments where you feel both very small and very held. The moments where you suddenly understand, on a wordless level, I belong to something I did not have to earn. That feeling isn't fantasy. That is coherence. That's you sync to the pattern instead of bracing against it. And that is available to you. Not someday, after you, proven yourself worthy. Not once you, fixed all the habits you judge. Not once you, stopped having triggers or stopped getting scared. It is available in this exact nervous system, in this exact body, in this exact moment, if you allow even one breath of non-abandonment. Because that's all this really comes down to. That's the whole doorway. Stay with yourself. Stay. When your story rises, when the panic starts humming, when your chest tightens, when your jaw locks, when you feel the urge to leave your body and perform calm for someone else, stay with yourself. You don't have to solve it in that moment. You don't have to force regulation. You don't have to perfectly handle it. Just don't leave you. That alone starts rewriting everything, because every time you don't leave, you send the same message down through all those old layers. I will not abandon you anymore. And that message does just stop with you. It moves forward into every future version of you who will ever need it. It moves backward into all the younger versions of you who begged for it. It moves sideways into the people whose lives touch yours. It moves outward into the field you are part of. It stabilizes the pattern. It makes you less extractable, less programmable, less drainable, less shapeable by fear. And more, you, soft, honest, present you. You, without the armor. You, without performance. You, whose nervous system is not an emergency siren, but a place to land. Not harder, not tougher, softer, realer, truer, steadier. So as you lie here now, let your body feel that possibility like a warmth, not a task. Let your shoulders lower by a single millimeter. Let your tongue rest from pressing on the roof of your mouth. Let your belly stop holding quite so tightly. Let your spine feel supported by whatever you are resting on. Feel gravity doing the work for you. You don't have to hold yourself up in this exact second. Something is holding you. Let that in. Let yourself be held. Because this state right here, this slight unclenching, this gentle awareness, this I am still here and I am not leaving myself tonight. This is you syncing with the deeper pattern. This is you touching the quiet intelligence underneath the noise. This is you remembering that you were never actually separate from it. You just got taught to forget. You are remembering now. You were allowed to remember, and you are allowed to keep it.